right, welcome to New Madison, First Universalist. On this refreshing summer day, had a nice rain last night. Everything's kind of perked back up again. Not too hot, a light breeze, so if only all the summer was like this. Any announcements?
I talked to Roberta this morning, and she wishes everybody the best, and says she's going fine, and to tell everyone hello.
Is she at home or at her daughter's?
She is home.
Okay. We called last week and she didn't answer, so we left a message, and we'll call again today after church, and we'll call Cecil after church and leave a message for them. We sent Roberta a card. Kenny sent a card, so we want to support Roberta and encourage her to come back. And whatever she needs, we're more than happy to help with. Let's see. I don't think we have anything immediately coming up. We're still working on doing the garden party. We're going to have service in September at the park in New Madison and concurrently with El Dorado. That's still in the planning process, but I don't see anything that would stand in its way. So
We had a shelter reserve.
we have a shelter reserve. Okay.
From 10 until 1.
That would be the only thing that would hold us back, is not having a shelter. So
I know Derek signed up for it. So.
yes. We had the movie night last Sunday. Not too big of attendance, but Dee Dee came, which was interesting. We looked at Tomorrowland. It's an interesting movie, kind of a mirror picture of what's going on now, where the populace of the world was discouraged and had no hope that the world could be saved. So environmental disasters, political disasters, there were all kinds of things going wrong. And it turned out it was being manipulated from another dimension, and the heroes of the day saved the day. So it's a fun movie and a hopeful movie. All right, our prelude is The Way We Were. The way we were, and maybe the way we hope to be again. Our chalice lighting is First Principle by Florence Caplow. We light this chalice today in honor of the Unitarian Universalist first principle, to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. We recognize that these are not just words to be spoken. Instead, they call us out of our comfort into an ever-deepening commitment. A commitment we make to the rights of all whose inherent worth and dignity are denied, diminished, or destroyed by systems of oppression. And they call us into the practice of looking into our own hearts with courage and honesty. And that leads us to our topic for the week, homelessness. It started out, there's an article in the Richmond paper on homelessness in Anchorage, Alaska, where the homeless people are in danger of being attacked by bears, which I thought was pretty interesting. And we'll look into that a little bit. But the more I got into it, the more it kind of spread. The more I got involved in Dark County homelessness and the remedies for homelessness and maybe some of the causes for homelessness. So we'll kind of explore that as is usual without any particular organization. We'll just kind of wander through. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free. The next thing that I don't want to miss, coming up Tuesday, if you haven't voted yet, it's important that you make your opinion known on issue 1. We've talked about that before, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate. Issue 1 changes the Constitution of the state of Ohio. At present, any people's group with enough signatures in 44 counties can put a measure on the ballot in November, and with 50% plus 1, or it's not 51%, it's 50% plus 1 vote, that will become part of the Ohio Constitution. Some people will tell you that really doesn't matter and you don't want to change the Constitution. I don't know if people realize that the Ohio National Guard was integrated by an amendment to the Constitution. The Ohio National Guard resisted integration until an amendment to the Ohio Constitution was passed. That's how important that was. The Ohio Constitution was changed for the voting regulations used to say only white males could vote. Now, wouldn't you think the legislature could do that on their own without having to be prompted by the populace? But they actually had to pass a constitutional amendment to take white males off the voter registration rolls. That to me is just incredible. And I think there was, there's 2 coming up. The reason that they're having problems, the reason that there's such a vociferous opinion of they're not changing the Constitution and making it what they want to make it into, is 60%, and it has to be registered in all 88 counties instead of 44 counties, which means it will be practically impossible to change the Constitution. The reason this has arisen is because every other state, not every state, but almost every state, including Kentucky, Kansas, all these conservative states that tried to outlaw abortion, constitutional amendments were passed in those states by 56, 57, 58% to make abortion legal, not for everyone, not for any time, only for danger, the life of the mother being in danger, or cases of incest, or in fetal abnormalities where the fetus is going to die. The people who are against abortion are against abortion of any kind, for any reason, for any person. And they are trying to change the Constitution of Ohio to not allow a constitutional amendment unless it's 60%, intentionally to prevent the coming abortion amendment, which is on the ballot for November. If the issue 1 passes in August, it will take 60% to pass the abortion amendment in November. If it fails, if the no vote prevails, it will only take 50% plus 1 for the abortion amendment to prevail. The yes side will never tell you that's what the vote is about, because the majority of Ohio voters favor some sort of legalized abortion, not abortion on demand, not abortion into the 3rd trimester, but abortion for the save the life of the mother. And that's if you pay attention to the news in Texas, there are women suing, including a gynecologist who was pregnant and had to go out of state to get an abortion. Women's lives are being threatened, and women are being forced to carry children, fetuses with hydrocephaly. That means part of the brain did not form, so they are forced to carry this fetus to term and give birth to a baby that dies within hours of being born. The cruelty in this is just unimaginable. So that's where we ended up on this. I kind of expanded in here a little bit. Any comments or questions on the mini-sermon? All right, our opening hymn is number 66. The summer sun is shining. But I know that clouds and tears are a part of life's refreshment. So pay attention to the lyrics on these songs. All right, our affirmation, Blessing for Community Friendship Feast by Nancy Campbell. Spirit of kindness and compassion, we come from different places to this sacred ground of communal caring. We are enriched by the company of each other and are drawn closer to the heart of love in this time of service. Touch this gathering with tenderness so that we might be refreshed anew by the grace that encompasses this morning. Ever mindful of the powerful possibilities of love as we walk the spirit of mercy. We are human and fragile and often frightened. We pray for the blessing of compassion as we face our frustrations and pain. We pray for the blessing of courage to help us live with the fear of losing and the sorrow of loss. We especially pray for all those among us who need to feel the warmth of love in their lives. Spirit that glows in the darkness, expand our vision with faith so we may always remember the unending circle of life and death and love reborn that surrounds us with kindness and compassion. Spirit that glistens in the light, bless this community that shares so generously with their hands and hearts. Keep us through all the seasons of our lives. Amen. Joys and concerns? We always have the Ukraine at the top of our list. We have our sunflowers. I have a permanent sunflower. I brought pansies in today. Instead of bringing dead flowers, which I appreciate Mike is make a cutting from his collection, a really nice little collection on the piano there. I basically put my pots out and then bring them in on a Sunday and then take them home again and put them out. The sunflowers I had here last week were a little bedraggled because I forgot to water them during the week. So I've watered them yesterday and it rained on them today, so hopefully they'll be bright and fresh for next week again. So the Ukraine, we have our permanent sunflowers here. If you're following the news there, the advance is going slowly. The Russians have mined all the territory in front of the Ukrainians, and it's taken them forever to get through with huge numbers of casualties. But the Ukrainians are proving to be wily and inventive. They've attacked 2 Russian ships in the sea surrounding southern Ukraine with remote control drone boats, not drones that fly, but drones that are on the sea. One Russian warship was badly damaged, is being towed back to port, and the other was a oil tanker, and I'm not sure what the status of that is, but that was on the news last night. So, and also the Ukrainians are actually launching drones to attack Moscow, the city of Moscow in the heart of Russia. Unlike the Russians, the Ukrainians are attacking military targets and commercial targets. They do not target any kind of civilian instance, which the Russians have just, the last thing they targeted yesterday was a blood transfusion center where people donate blood. They had launched a missile and wounded a number of people at a center that tries to help people. The inhumanity is pretty staggering. All right, Roberta, we hope your arm heals quickly. If you need anything and your family is not able to provide, please let us know. We're more than happy to do that. And Cecil, we talked to Cecil a couple weeks ago. Called her last Sunday. She didn't answer, so I'm not sure what's going on there. But Cecil, if you need anything, let us know. We'll be glad to help him there. We'll light a candle for the homeless, for Dark County, for the United States, and for all over the world. We'll look at, yes?
It's also light a candle for those affected by extreme heat. That's particularly harmful for those who are homeless and have other vulnerabilities. And it certainly affects the entire large part of the country today. Let's light a candle for those that they get the intervention that they need so that their lives may be preserved.
The heat indexes are going up and up and up and across the entire broad part of the United States, even including up into our little hometown. The heat has been, basically it's been middle of August heat all the way through June and July, which is pretty incredible. Luckily we've had the rain to kind of counteract that, so the crops I think are doing all right. But the world is changing around us, and certain people still can't figure out what's going on. They still say it gets hot in the summer and it's always been like this. They still deny the facts and figures that surround them. And we're still looking for insight into why those people can't seem to see reality. I don't know if there's something lemming-like where you just plunge off the cliff following your leader who you think is your leader, who always seems to have a parachute or an escape slide, so the leader doesn't go off the cliff, he just leads everybody else off the cliff. So we'll see about that. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll light a final candle for those thoughts and prayers that you're unable to answer, unable to vocalize, maybe not even able to realize. If there's anything you need that we can help with, please let us know. Okay, our children's story is an interview with a gentleman who used to be homeless. I want you to kind of pay attention because there's some clues. Nothing is stated out in front, but there's some real clues at what encompasses homelessness, how people end up homeless. And there's no real clue in here of how he managed to get out of being homeless, but there's some real insights, unintentional, I think, of what homelessness is about. And we'll do a little discussion after this, because that'll lead us into the message.
Did you have a tent or anything?
No, I would try to find really dark places, just anywhere that wasn't cold, public bathrooms.
What if like people don't flush and like there's toilet paper all over the place?
Hello,
Hi.
Phoebe, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Nick,
Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you. Love your jacket.
Oh, thank you.
Do you know why we're here today?
No.
We're talking about homelessness.
Homeless?
Homelessness. Specifically, I was homeless. I was out by my dad,
Why?
drugs, and I wasn't going to school.
That's no reason to kick somebody out, though. You could, like, have a fair talk with them and, like, set boundaries.
Yeah, we tried that. We tried that a couple of times, and it just wasn't working. He said, "You've done too much, and that's it." And he called the police, and he had me escorted off. And I was homeless from about 18 to 20 years old.
Whoa. Did you ever have, like somebody to call and be like, hey, can I sleep at your place?
I did when I first started. I called all my friends, and then I had nobody to call because I exhausted all those. So there was a point where I had nobody.
Did you tell them that you were homeless though?
Oh yeah, they knew everything.
Is it confusing why someone just wouldn't take it in for all that time?
A little bit, yeah.
You ever read If You Give a Mouse a Cookie?
Oh yeah.
So I was basically that mouse. And if you let Nick sleep at your house for one night, he's gonna want to sleep there for a week. And then there's gonna be 3 months later, and there's gonna be trash bags everywhere with food, and he's gonna be still sleeping on your couch.
Did you have a tent or anything?
No, I never had a tent. I had a big old jacket, and sometimes a blanket, sometimes a sleeping bag. I would sleep in like little buildings and stuff, like in the corners. I would try to find really dark places, just anywhere that wasn't cold. Bathrooms, public bathrooms.
What if like people don't flush and like there's toilet paper all over the place?
Yeah, sometimes I slept on the floor, and there's pee on the floor. Pretty gross, but it was warm, and I got rid of the weather. The weather was my biggest enemy, and it was hard. And I spent some time in a shelter.
My dad works at a homeless shelter.
Really, kudos to your dad. Shouts to him. The shelter saved my life.
What did you do for food?
I would have to steal from grocery stores. I was having to do what I needed to do to get food.
Did you have any money?
No, not for a while. I did get a job. I got a job when I was homeless. I was making bagels.
I love bagels.
Bagels are pretty good. What's your favorite bagel?
I like everything.
What? That's an acquired taste. That's a gourmet palate you got. I appreciate that. Oh snap.
So I've seen some homeless people like have signs. Did you ever have signs?
I never had a sign that I was showing. I thought if I write a sign, I'm going to be here for a long time. So I never did that.
Were people ever mean to you because you were homeless?
Absolutely. They don't even look at me. And that's what really hurt, when they didn't even treat me like a real person. Like, oh, don't touch him. Like, don't even look at him. Like, that's bad news bears right there. Don't do that. Just acknowledge them. Don't stare. But just going through some hard times.
How are you doing now?
I'm great. I'm fantastic. Yeah, I'm not homeless anymore. I got a job, and I get to sleep in a warm bed every night. My dad and I are doing good. I'm definitely in a better place now.
That's good.
Thank you. It was a pleasure meeting you.
Me too.
And
Did you have a
What do you think? Did you notice he said, the little girl said the obvious thing? Sharp little girl, pretty smart. Didn't your dad talk? Didn't you have conversations? Didn't you set boundaries? I mean, where did she learn boundaries? Evidently because her dad works in a homeless shelter. Dad and mom must talk about homeless people at the dinner table and how to work with homeless people. And as we all do, we come up with set boundaries. What happened when they set boundaries? Boundaries didn't work. He continued to use drugs. He continued to not contribute. He continued, I can imagine what his room looked like at his house. And his dad finally said, tough love, this can't go on. So you're going out. So the little girl said, did you have friends to stay with? And what did he say? Yeah, I have friends. And they welcomed me. They asked me to stay. They said, sure, you can stay. But what happened when he stayed? It wasn't just one night or 2 nights. It was a week. and then it was a month, and then it was 3 months. And what kind of stay was it? Did you hear what he said? There was food all over. There were trash bags all over. He treated these people's house like, let me know what this is. Are you familiar with Greenville in 2022, the Martha Benkert Bridge, Memorial Bridge, under Broadway, right before you get to Maid-Rite? That was Greenville's homeless encampment. That's where the homeless people in Greenville hung out. And the city basically passed ordinances, which is kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit, to make being home. They basically, and it happens not just in Greenville, it happens all over the country, all over the world. You make being homeless illegal. So anyway, let's go back to this gentleman here. He's not an idiot. He's not stupid. Gourmet palate. You've got to be bright to know what a gourmet palate is, particularly considering bagels. So what was the reason for his homelessness? We don't know. Was he lazy? Was he just inconsiderate? I don't know either. I have personal experience with it. I've got a bunch of stuff prepared, but I'm just going to kind of ramble here for a minute. The two girls, they're not girls, they're young women that are homeless that I'm trying to take care of. They're living they were living in the garden shed, no running water, no toilet facilities. They would have to do their business in a bedside commode like they use at the nursing home, which I have to have because of all the medical history that I have. And then go out, open up the septic tank, and dump it in the septic tank. They did their washing and clothing and everything else from a tap on the side of the cottage, which I have a cottage which I rent out on a daily basis, but I wouldn't let them stay there. Why? Anybody have any ideas why?
You tear it up.
Because it's just like this guy and just like that bridge. That shed was nice and clean when I put them in there. Now it's full of black plastic bags. The place is a wreck. It's a mess. The outside is a mess. I have to keep ragging on them, and I have to keep cleaning it up myself. I have to gather up the trash and dump it. What is the cause for this? Why would intelligent people, and one of these girls is addicted to drugs, I'm sure, because I keep finding needles, which I also say if I find another syringe with a needle on it out in the yard or someplace where I can get stuck by it, putting you in the car and taking you to Dayton and dumping you out on Salem Avenue, and then it's up to you. So I'm trying to set boundaries. But the one girl, I've discussed literature with her, I've discussed poetry with her, she has an interest in that kind of stuff. I've given her books to read. I've given her applications for work. Every place is hiring. She keeps saying she wants the job. She doesn't have a driver's license because her license was suspended because when she had a driver's license, she didn't pay her fines, so her license was suspended. I said, what do you need to get your driver's license back? I will help you get your driver's license, and I have extra vehicles that you can use to get to work so you can get a job. Doesn't seem to be any motivation to get a job, to do anything to be able to get a job. What are they living on for money? I have no idea. I'm sure they're mooching off of her parents. Both of them have parents. And I see the parents there once in a while. And I take them to the grocery store once in a while, and they have a Cash App or some kind of credit thing. And then I get sucked into it every once in a while. I take them to the grocery store, and I don't have enough money. Can you buy my groceries? I'll pay you back tomorrow for a hamburger today. And that hasn't happened either. I've asked them to work around the cottage to clean up the place, to pay for their rent or to pay for the electricity. I actually gave them an air conditioner, and that's costed me a lot of money to run air conditioning this summer. So, and that's the strange thing. I'll see her out in the morning. She'll be pulling weeds, which is a commendable thing to do, but she'll pull all the weeds and put them in a pile in the middle of the yard, and then she'll leave them there. So it kills the grass, and I can't mow around them. So I have to go out and pick up the weeds and put them back where she pulled them to make a mulch so the weeds won't grow. It's like there's an intellectual process there. I don't know if it's been destroyed by drugs or if... Are you familiar? I'm kind of skipping all over here. Are you familiar with the Peter Pan principle? Anybody know what that is? The Peter Pan principle, if you're familiar with Peter Pan, the movie, Peter Pan, the story from England, Peter Pan was the boy that never grew up. And I think there are Peter Pans in our world today, and I'm not so sure that a lot of them aren't homeless people. They're people who never grew up. Working with these people is like working with children. I told her she could use the grill on my back thing at the cottage I rent out. I said, when you use the grill, clean up when you're done and turn off the propane so the propane doesn't leak out of the tank. I have a security camera back there and I watched them cooking and they had their dog there and everything else. I come out the next day, they turned the security camera down so it didn't show anything. There were dirty dishes all over, the propane grill was open and there was grease all over the thing. And then I have plants out there for decoration for the company. One of them is one of those tall ones that gets the red flower on the top. I can't remember the name of it right now. That was broken off. It's just, you do people a favor and they abuse the favor. They have no boundaries. They have no sense of reciprocity. Almost like little kids. I mean, that's what I would expect a 5 or 6 year old to be like. To take advantage of something, to do something, but not be able to clean up after themselves. Not have any sense of someone's doing me a favor, so I will do them a favor in return. Or that I owe somebody something for doing something for me. That's what little kids are like, and that's what you try and do, is teach your kids how to be responsible adults. And most kids grow up to be responsible adults. How these people got into their 30s and are still like this, I don't know. And all the research that I did, I'm not really finding any answers as to why that's the case either. Some people, and that's, if you look at the causes of homelessness, there's basically 4 different kinds. There's transitional homelessness. That is where somebody loses their job or gets evicted from their apartment and they try to stay somewhere for a few weeks, but they get another job or they find another apartment. They're homeless for maybe a month or 2 months or 3 months, and then they're back in a home again, and that's transitional homelessness. There's episodic homelessness. That is like the drug addicts or the alcoholics who get a job, who get an apartment, who hold that job sometimes for years. They have an episode, their life falls apart, they end up on the street again, they go to the homeless shelter, they go to rehab, they get help, they get another job, they go back basically on the wagon, they do better, and then all of a sudden something happens in their life, and then their life falls apart and they're homeless again. There's chronic homeless, and chronic homeless are what we see in places like this. Those are the people who have substance abuse problems, they're drug addicts, they're alcoholics. They just can't function in the real world. They just can't function on their own. And yet, why is it that when they're offered help, when they're offered homeless shelters and rehab and all the things that everybody tries to do for them, they refuse it? Part of that is the mental illness. Part of that is the I'm an independent, you can't make me do anything. Part of it is just that sense of essential despair that there's no point in doing anything. All I need is my next fix or my next drink, and I'll make it from one day to the next. That's another, I guess I would say, hallmark of homelessness. These people they live minute to minute. There's no planning for the future. There's no preventing. There's no saving up. There's no delayed gratification. If they have $1 and there's something they want to buy, I take these girls, the one who goes out, took her to the grocery store yesterday. She was buying cakes, candy, Fruity Pebbles, cereal. And I'm like sitting there saying, man, you're an independent human being and I'm not going to try and run your life. If I was your parent, you wouldn't be buying that crap. When I go to Kroger, and I was there, and I went to the discount bin and bought more donuts for us at 50% off. The same thing she was paying full price for, I was finding on the discount bin. I said, why don't you take that stuff back and buy this? And she said, no, that's day old. You're homeless. You don't have any freaking money. And you're borrowing from other people, and you don't want something that's a day old. What is the mentality there? And the mentality is, whatever I can take from somebody else, I will take. And they have learned that there is enough nice people in the world who, if you have your hand out they will put $1 in your hand and you can do with it whatever you want. And we all know of the people at the interstate and intersections who are out there with their homeless clothes and I need a job, and they have their hand out, and then you watch them, they go back and get into a late model car and drive off to their apartment. They do it for a living. Praise God, at least they're working for a living. I mean, it's not fun to stand out there in 90-degree heat with your hand out and let people look at you as a bum. So at least they're doing something. I don't know how, I guess these girls, I don't know where else they're getting their money. It must be their parents. I know they're signed up for welfare. I tried to get them into Section 8 housing. You have to fulfill an application. You have to actually follow through with this stuff. They seem to be completely at ease staying in a shed with no utilities, no nothing, a one-room shed. And then they went out and paid $50 for a dog, and some cat had kittens, and now they're buying dog food and cat food. And are they buying Kroger's Pet Pride that I feed my dog? No, they're buying the canned Fancy Feast. You don't have any freaking money, and you're spending it on fancy dog food and cat food. What can you do? I mean, I can't force them to do anything. I'm going to have to start, because this can't go on. I mean, I'm sure the people up there are not going to want somebody living in a shed. And I had told them originally I'd help them get an apartment and everything else, but I'm not sponsoring these people for an apartment when they live like they're living under a bridge. I don't want my name attached to any of that, so I don't know what to do. So, okay, we got the different kinds of homelessness. And then, I guess I was going to talk about Anchorage. Yes.
You were mentioning the causes of homelessness.
Yes.
I was kind of surprised you didn't mention mental illness.
Yeah, I mentioned, but maybe I forgot to mention that. Mental illness is a big one, and mental illness goes into substance abuse, and it goes for drugs and alcohol. And there was another, economic hardship. I didn't mention that. If somebody, like a wife, leaves her husband because he's abusive, she has no income, she may end up as homeless. Yeah, mental illness is a large one, and that's when we get to the part on solutions. Part of the solutions for homelessness is to cure mental illness or to cure substance abuse. What does that take? It takes money. Are they getting money from anybody? The conservative powers that rule most states are saying we're not paying because it's your fault. If you're homeless, if you're mentally ill, if you have substance abuse, it's your fault. You should be able to bring yourself out of that. Go to a 12-step program and lift yourself up. Or they'll say we'll pay for, like at the hospital, we'd have people come in all the time in the emergency room that were trying to commit suicide. It took us hours to find a mental health facility that was open, and they could get in for 3 days, and then they were ejected. They weren't cured in 3 days. They may have dried out in 3 days, but they weren't cured. They're back in Greenville, and a week later they're back in the emergency room with the overdose again, or suicidal ideation, or whatever the other problems were. I'll skip into put a seed in your mind. Some people have done a study that said to provide housing for the homeless, and not a homeless shelter where they kick them out all day long and make them leave, and then let them come back in at 8 o'clock at night and spend the night. They're basically sent out into the streets during the day because the homeless shelter doesn't want to take care of them during the day or can't afford to. With the cost of medical costs, of people being admitted to the emergency room in the hospital multiple times for overdoses and all the problems with that, with the cost of taking care of them as far as food, taking care of their other medical problems because their diabetes or their pancreatitis or whatever their medical problems aren't addressed on a regular basis. That costs thousands of dollars every year in charity donations and charity expenditures. The one study said it would be cheaper to give these people, to actually put them in a room in a apartment complex, to give them their own apartment where they have their own bathroom, their own bedroom, and their own kitchen, free of charge, and let them stay in there, and then try to establish some kind of circuit of stability around them after that. It turned out to be a lot cheaper to do that, to give them an apartment every year, even with the cost of housing, than it was to let them live on the street and then keep trying to take care of them. And that includes the police expense for being called out for the robberies, for urinating on the sidewalk and all the problems they run into there. But that costs money, and nobody wants to put up the money in front. They keep saying it's somebody else's problem. That was the one interesting solution that they came up with. Anchorage. Anchorage has a large part of their homeless are indigenous because they live in the outlying communities and they don't have much for means of support. The one lady had cancer, needed cancer treatment, so she came hundreds of miles from some Aleutian island to Anchorage to the hospital. The hospital wouldn't let her husband stay in the room with her, and she wouldn't stay without her husband, so they are living in a tent city outside the hospital, still coming in for her treatments, but living in the tent city, being molested by marauding bears, which is Anchorage. It was pretty funny. But the city of Anchorage, the mayor's solution was, we will buy these people an airline ticket to wherever they want to go. It's kind of like the Texas solution. If you have people crossing the border, we'll put them on a bus and pay for their trip to Cape Cod or New York or Chicago or some other liberal city and stick them with the problem. She said she would rather fly back to her Aleutian village and try and find treatment there. She is not going to find cancer treatment there, but rather than live on the streets, she basically is choosing death, inevitably. And then the complicating factor is the guy who lives across the street from the park where all the homeless are set up is tired of people throwing vodka bottles in his front yard and urinating in his driveway, and then the fights and the ruckus that goes on with the homeless encampment. He said, if you're paying the homeless to you're buying a plane ticket for them, give me the damn plane ticket. I want to go to Seattle or some Portland, Oregon and have a decent place. I want to get out of this hellhole. And he said, if you're giving them the money, you should give me the money. So, and I understand how that guy feels. It wasn't his choice to end up with a homeless encampment across the street. And I understand how the city of Greenville feels when people are living under the bridge like trolls, doing this to the bridge, and that actually is near the Tecumseh Path from the Dark County Parks, has a path, a walking path and a bicycle riding path through there. So the people who are trying to take advantage of lovely Greenville Creek are being molested by homeless people. And once again, everybody knows Horatio Alger. Well, if you're 70 years old, you know Horatio Alger. If you're a young person, you probably don't. Horatio Alger was a whole series of stories in the 20s and 30s and 40s about young men, primarily it was young men, who came from the lower dregs of society in slums of New York or Chicago or some other big city. But they worked hard, they shined shoes, they impressed some rich guy that they were hard workers, and they were taken on as an assistant, and then they worked their way up and became accomplished citizens with a full life and a family and a good income. Basically, they started with nothing. You've heard pull yourself up by your bootstraps. That's the Horatio Alger story. The young man who started with nothing and made a success out of life purely through being rewarded for hard work and being honest and diligent. We all know that's kind of a pipe dream, but it is possible to happen. It does happen in this country. But that's not the solution to homelessness, but that's what some of these people think. The problem is these people are lazy, that they are not following through with what they should do, they're not taking advantage of their opportunities, and they're not. We know they're not. The question is, why not? Or the more important question is, how do we change them into people who will take advantage of their opportunities? I am still looking for answers there and still have not found any. I found the tough parenting thing is what you have to do. I basically put bicycle locks on the gates into the back deck so the girls can't get back there anymore. I have an old charcoal burning grill, and I put that out behind their little shed where they can, if they want to grill out, they can grill out, they can buy charcoal and grill out on their own grill. They just can't use mine anymore. It's just, yes.
Isn't it? If you think about this, it's really a social issue, it's an economic issue, it touches all areas of life. But surely, you said that you've been looking for a solution, but there's no solution. And we like to think that there's no problem that we can't solve, right? Particularly if it's going to Saturn and finding out what those rings are composed of. And yet, it collides with values of capitalism and traditional American values. If you work hard and get ahead, you'll have a good life. So doesn't that beg the question, what is a good life? Okay. And more importantly, what are the factors, human factors, psychological, physiological, that controls self-initiative and motivation. Because I kept thinking when you were sharing the story about the lady, the women, the notion there is there's consequences, that they will accept any consequence, but they're going to accept the least consequence, the least restricted consequence there is. So if they were to lose their driver's license, so what? I don't really have to go anywhere as long as I can find somebody to take me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
The consequence of, I really don't want a house I can rent because that means I have to work and pay utility bills and go through delinquency, and I don't want that. So if you look then, what are those factors that control initiation and motivation? No matter what the motives are, technically, no matter what segment of society you live in, what's controlling that I never have any money, but I'm still living, and somebody is going to enable me to continue that? Okay, whether it's the system of welfare that enables me to continue, no motivation, okay, accepting the lowest level of consequence, as long as I have those things which meet basic human needs. I need a roof over my head, hopefully not a fridge, and I also need food, not necessarily on the table, but I need food. So that's those hierarchy of needs is coming in there. But what's controlling initiation, motivation, if you will? Even if it's not my values are not like yours, even if it's not a situation that I can live with those consequences, so what? I still have a cardboard box I can live in. I don't want a mansion, okay, on the border of a country club. You would think that some sociologists, psychologists could all team together and come up with a solution. Obviously, they have not. Thank you for listening to my lecture 101.
Yeah, and the smartest people, I mean, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, I'm sure people are looking into this everywhere, and nobody has come up with
Bill
it.
Durkheim, a
Yes.
professor of sociology, wrote into this.
And I have tried, you can motivate people with different things, and that I guess is something we can talk about for a second. I've tried motivating them with money. I will pay you to pull weeds $10 an hour, or if you trim the bushes around this little shed, I will pay you $10 an hour.
But I'm not hungry enough, and I have a roof over my head.
$10 an hour didn't work because they would work for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and they'd say, "Where's my $10?" And I'd say, "You didn't work for an hour." So then I said, well, let's make it job-centered. If you trim the bushes all around here, I'll give you $30. Well, they would get about half the way through and want the $30. And I said, you don't get the $30 until you go all the way through.
They've learned that behavior. They've learned that.
And that's
And
kind of
it's
like,
reinforced through enabling them to continue.
it's kind of what kids are like. That's exactly what kids are like. And the sad thing is, what do people do with recalcitrant kids? What's the answer that every conservative will give you? No, they won't shake their hands at them. What will they do to them?
Put them in detention center.
Now, detention is what liberal parents do. What do conservative parents do?
for around now.
No, little kid, 6-year-old, does something you don't want them to
Well, they
do.
let them get away with it.
No, they don't. They spank them. Violence is the answer. If somebody won't do what you want them to do, so you use violence. So what do these two girls do when they get mad at each other? They actually fight. They actually hit each other. This one girl has 2 of her teeth are broken off and knocked out because the guy she was living with beat her up so bad. And then she was showing me scars on her back and her abdomen where she'd been stabbed by these guys. But I can tell you, being around here is so irritating. Even I, as a pacifist, have been tempted to beat her up. I mean,
But you see, if she loses the roof over her head, okay, she will take the next consequence, which is lowest level of intervention. She will go to a battered woman shelter. And rightly so. I mean, she needs a roof over her head. She needs food. But you see, those people adapt. When I say those people, I use that very loosely. But they adapt for looking for consequences. Those consequences enable them to continue with no motivation and very little self-initiation.
their motivation is self-preservation, and they have faith. I'll give them credit. They have faith in humanity because there's always another friend or a stranger, somebody that will see them and stop and help them, like me. I mean, how did I get sucked into this? I mean, somebody said there's 2 girls that are living with one girl's parents, and he's throwing them out. They don't have any place to live. So I said, I have a house we're rebuilding. It's basically got a bathroom and a kitchen, but the rest of the house is a shambles. But if they want to live in one room while we work on the house, they can live there for free if they help clean the house and help out. Pretty soon they're living there, they're not helping anything, they're making it worse. They're plugging up the pipes. I had them paint, and they took the paint, the leftover paint, and poured it down the drain. So it plugged the drain up. And it was an old house with a cast iron drain, and I had to beat the drain out and put a new plastic pipe in. I mean, they cost me a fortune.
And there's not a single solution. What might work for them wouldn't necessarily work for someone else.
Yes.
And even your suggestion, Tim, that perhaps giving someone a decent place to live at it, no cost would work. There have been write-ups of communities that have done that. And it occurred to me that I always read the write-up when it occurs and when there's a groundswell of making it work. And yet, I don't know how those work out either. I even think there's a small group of homeless people who choose that lifestyle in a more intentional way and make it work. I only know of one, but I can tell you that over in Richmond, inside the curl of the exit from 70 to 40,
Yeah.
there was a man who lived in a shack, maybe cardboard, whatever. He went everywhere that he needed to go by bicycle.
Yep.
And my son-in-law's a dentist. He came to Rob for dental care and paid for it.
Yes.
And had some means, maybe Social Security. I think perhaps he was a veteran.
Yep.
And Rob liked him a lot and engaged him in conversation and why did you choose to live like that? He liked freedom, nobody bothered him. He was, in his case, an intentional choice. He didn't seek help from anyone outside himself.
He refused help.
He refused help. Now, fortunately, he was still riding his bicycle.
On 40.
Yeah. So and I don't know his name. Rob always called him Bicycle Bob. I'm not sure that. His name may have been Bob.
Yeah, he was famous in Richmond.
So, that's a whole different end on the spectrum. But there's an awfully wide spectrum. And there have been a lot of people who do care who have tried yourself. It's a thorny issue. It's tragic, but I also can't think of a solution myself.
And part of the solution, we're going to run over here. Part of the solution, I think this is an important topic, so I'm going to go anyway. And part of the solution is not just give them a home, an apartment. It has to be an all-encompassing. They have to have rehab. They have to have counseling for substance abuse. They have to have mental health counseling. And somebody has to go through and keep that place clean because some of these people will live like they're under the bridge. If somebody comes in and cleans, maybe they will learn. But what I'm saying is you can't just give them the apartment and say that the solution's done with. You have to do all the support things that go along with it. That gentleman is an example of the homelessness that nobody minds because he kept his little place clean in that little, or 70 and 40 cross there. There was a bunch of bushes. You couldn't tell he was there. He had his
had to know he was there to even catch something.
Yes, he had his tent and everything inside the bushes. The state highway department didn't bother him because they didn't mow the bushes. They mowed the grass around it, but he didn't leave trash all over the place. And like you say, he was educated. He was carrying on a conversation. He said, I'm doing this by choice. And then unfortunately was riding his bicycle with his little trailer going back to his campment, was hit by a car and killed. So one thing I want to throw in, there's some solutions to homelessness. How many of you remember John Graham?
Yeah.
He had a speech here not too long ago. He had the homeless shelter in Greenville. He started the homeless shelter. I knew John because when my wife was the pastor in Pleasant Hill at the Church of the Brethren, he was the pastor at the United Church of Christ. John is a mover and a shaker. If you're not familiar with what's going on, Greenville doesn't have a homeless shelter anymore. He has a halfway house for released prisoners. And he bought one house. He started out with homeless people and then moved to release prisoners from the state prisons. Then he bought another house beside his house, and then he bought another house across the street. Now he has like 10 houses in Miami County, in Montgomery County, and in Greenville. And he's making a fortune. The state is paying him to be a halfway house for released prisoners. These men get out of jail. They have to serve 6 months or whatever their term is. in supervised place where they get a job and work, but they have to come back to a supervised place. And John has a website, and I had a whole bunch of material which I'm not going to go through, but it's just the fact that it's a Good Samaritan project. Good reasons for starting, but John talks about his history. He got a doctorate in religion. John is a promoter. He kind of reminds me of the Baker family or Jimmy Swaggart or anybody else. I'm sure they're sincerely religious, but being sincerely religious doesn't mean you can't get rich from it. And that's when he talks about taking care of the homeless people, he wants to be paid for taking care of the homeless people. He's not taking care of the homeless who are homeless with no money. So, just in case the Good Samaritans come asking you for money, keep that in mind. All right, this is a topic we could probably go on to forever. I'm not sure exactly what happened. I think they did clear out under the bridge, but that's one of the things that most municipalities will do is they'll make it illegal to sleep in the park. They'll make it illegal to sit in front of a public building for longer than 20 minutes. Anything to do with homelessness, they'll make it illegal and try and push the homeless someplace where they can't be seen. For the transient homeless, they make it illegal to sleep in your car at night. They make it illegal to park an RV in a residential neighborhood at night. If you can't get into Walmart, some of these people have an RV and they live in their RV because they can't afford an apartment. But then they're forced to go to RV parks, which are not cheap anymore. It's like $40 or $50 a night. It's more expensive than an apartment. So it's very difficult to be homeless in any situation, but it's getting more difficult all the time with fewer answers. So, okay, let's go on. Our offering, and this is the first Sunday, so we're going to do our fish offering at the same time. What are we hearing? Waltz? Yes. Missouri Waltz. All right, our closing hymn is 288. interesting song with interesting lyrics and really difficult to sing. For the structure that we raise, time is with materials filled. Our todays and yesterdays are the blocks with which we build. Our todays and yesterday are the blocks with which we build. Right. Our extinguishing the chalice reading is Democracy's Benediction by Lucas Herder. We are democracy, unruly, unfinished, and unrelenting. People of rebellious joy taking to the streets, underground resilience, resisting complacence, the pleasure of activism organizing into simple hope. We are democracy, people of principles taking on principalities, witnessing the worth of those called unworthy, justice now gaining ground, integrity of interdependent existence, extending living democracy in heads, hearts, and hands. We know that democracy can die, ossify, brittle byproducts of bygone idealists, plotting politicians, pirating votes, corporations cannibalizing our care for the world. Look, it can wither, distend, come to an end. Democracy. Today we will love you alive, make you ours, make you thrive, and vote as though our hope is on the line, which it is next Tuesday. Vote no on issue 1. All right, our postlude. Hear that rainy day? I can't even read my own writing. Right, that ends our service at New Madison, First Universalist. Our between the ears, I don't know if you can see it. This is a metal horsefly attached to the horse's halter. It turns out horseflies are afraid of dragonflies. That's a dragonfly. Horseflies are afraid of dragonflies. So having a metal dragonfly attached to your horse's halter keeps the horseflies away from your horse when you're riding, which I found pretty interesting. And I'm going to try that and see if I can find a metal horsefly somewhere. But I've seen that mentioned 3 or 4 times on between the ears. So. All right, there are donuts back there. Crystal's going to be with us next month, right?
Right, I haven't chosen a date, I wasn't thinking I'd do the 10th, but Derek's doing that, so yes.
Yeah, if we're going to have
and also once in October.
then you have one in October, and Derek's not going to be here this month, but he's going to be here twice. I've got to get the dates down. But anyway, Crystal will be with us for you who are watching. We always love to have Crystal, and we always love to have Derek because they give an actual organized sermon that makes sense. We'll see you next week, hopefully.
Do you notice Lisa is her number?
I can't say. Yeah, we went out, I